Well, hello everybody. I hope you see me while I'm talking. All right, so once again, very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you for being here today with us on this very special event, I would say. Today we have an honor within Experts Talk series at our Institute of Architecture Landscape. We have an honor to bring Monica today, and Monica Gagliano is evolutionary scientist, cutting edge scientist, public science communicator, and she will be today sharing some thoughts and ideas on how do we live together, how do we cohabit together, and where is our cohabitation right now? Just a brief information, this video will be recorded, and hopefully maybe we can share this later on. And you know, I will not waste much time as this event is going to last for only 30 minutes. And I believe we have a lot of things to discuss, and we are going to open quite important questions that we will try to maybe ask even more questions than providing answers today, which is, I think, the main focus as well in this talk. So, Monica, thank you again for being with us.
Thank you.
Yes, and I will give you the floor, the mic, the screen, whatever you call it today. But please welcome.
I feel very welcome, and I can see the numbers of the participants. I don't see everyone, but I can imagine that everyone is seeing me, so hello. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge that I speak from the Arakwal area of Australia. That's the indigenous name of the place where I live, and it's part of the Banjalan Nation, which is the indigenous nation that this area belongs to, who looked after it before it got stolen. And the reason why I really want to acknowledge that today is particularly important because I've been reading, I just started reading a new book by Sean Wilson, who is an Indigenous scholar, and he writes on Indigenous research methods, and is really feeding into where I want to go with my own work. And the book is called Research is Ceremony, and Sean Wilson, so you might be able to see the name as well. It's really, I just started, it seems really easy to read, and it's really beautiful. But if you don't mind, I'd like to start by reading a couple of lines that I read from him today from his introduction to the book. And he says, Indigenous epistemology is all about ideas developing through the formation of relationships. An idea cannot be taken out of its relational context and still maintain its shape. And then he refers to Heisenberg, who was a physicist, and to give an example of what that means. And he says, Heisenberg theorized in his theory of uncertainty in physics that it is impossible to know both the velocity and the location of an electron at the same time. You would have to stop it to measure its location, or you would have to lose its location if it maintains its velocity. So the idea is exactly the same. To know exactly both the context and the definition of an idea at the same time is not possible. But because the closer you get to defining something, the more you lose its context. But that's why the focus should be on the relating of the two. And I guess this is ultimately the key word, I think, for the entire discussion, for me, from my perspective, because cohabiting, it means that we need to understand how we relate to the spaces around us. And this can be like what we consider, from a Western perspective, we consider like spaces made of objects or things.
Mm.
I am.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Um, so I was saying the idea is to enter in relationship with everything, including the spaces that, from our perspective, we consider like not alive, because there is not such a space that is not alive. And what I mean by being alive is that it's relating to us, and we're relating to it, and we are it. We are part. We are the thing that we are discussing. We are the thing that we are trying to relate to and describe. And so I guess as a scientist, I was trained, and that's the easy part in a way. I was trained to use the Western scientific approach and methodology to ask questions. And I was used to be the objective observer. And I think that we are seeing in general, and of course I'm experiencing this within my own life history and my own career, that this approach separates us by default, because you are observing something that is objectified out there, and it actually doesn't work. It doesn't answer the question that we want to look the answer for, and the answers that we are claiming to have found are always so incomplete, because what is missing is the relationship. And so, as Sean was saying, but building this relational space is not simple, because we are so used to wanting to capture things and either measure the location or the velocity, measure the idea or the context. And so I guess what I'm learning, and I think what many of us are learning at this time, is to allow for ideas to emerge through the relationships. And I guess this is what is also guiding my science at the moment, and it's getting worse or better, depends on the perspective, because I don't tend to establish my questions and my answer too soon. And I guess, you might say, yeah, but that's easy for you, but we are designing things, and I imagine that some of you might go on and design beautiful buildings or spaces where people actually need to live and they need to work, like you don't want them to collapse on people and kill someone. So it's like, yeah, it's easy for you to say. If your experiment doesn't work, or if you take your time, it doesn't really matter. But if I build a building that then collapses, that does matter, at least to us. And I guess, again, it's a matter of, I'm not saying what you should be doing, because you are the experts, but what I'm trying to insinuate is that maybe there are many different ways to get there, and maybe we don't actually need to know, in the case of a building as well, we don't need to know what the ultimate outcome is to be. And because just like the idea in the context is like the relationship will allow for exactly the right building or the right experiment or the right thing to emerge out of that connecting. And before, and I don't really know where I'm going, but because we chatted briefly just before, and I was thinking like, well, I don't really know what I have to really contribute, except that, this is, I'm a scientist, and some scientists are not even quite sure whether I still qualify as a scientist. But what I thought is, because you guys are in design, and I think that you are going to have you have a very important role, because you're going to create, literally dream, imagine, and then build and create the spaces that are going to allow for this relating or not. And for now, we have built a lot of spaces that do not actually allow us to connect and relate with the others that co-inhabit this space with us. And so you have a really important role to reimagine humanity and the relationship that humanity is going to have. But before I shut up and I just open to the conversation, because otherwise it's defeating the point. Is like the point of this is actually to allow for ideas and conversation to emerge in co-creation. But recently I was I don't know if you can see it. Recently I was shown by a friend who went to a little workshop with an elder here in the area how to weave a basket. And I never weaved a basket before. And so my friend said, "Oh, it's easy, just I'll show you." So she showed me the very first step, and she gave me the needle with this is raffia, so it's just paper.
Mm.
And she gave me a bunch of colors, and I'm like, well, where do I start? And it's like, wherever. And what color shall I put in? Like, whichever. I don't even know whether this is going to end up being a basket. I don't know what color is coming next. I don't know what color I started with and why I started with that. I just started picking a color, and then I picked the next color, and then I started putting them together and see what would come out. And at the moment it looks like this, but who knows? And the point of that is that this is exactly how I work now. It's like, okay, I don't need to know what the basket is going to look like. I don't have to be the expert of basket making and know from the beginning what the final outcome is and what the final result is. So that is no longer result driven, but is about my relating with this paper, the different colors, and not only that, but because I don't know how to do baskets, we sat outside under a tree, and she showed me, and in the meantime we were catching up and chatting, which is exactly what the old ladies used to do here. In indigenous lady would come in, and we call it yarning circle, which is just literally, let's have a chat while we are weaving and allowing for things to emerge. And as you're weaving the basket, you're actually weaving the relationship, you're weaving ideas, you're weaving dreams that, we are discussing things that we want to do together on the land where we live and share. So here's my basket. What kind of strands are you gonna include in my basket?
Yeah, exactly, Monica. Thank you for this, because I think we many things have been exposed to us these days, and questioning on these relationships, on how do we actually create things, right? And I, therefore, saying this, I would somehow give now the opportunity, let's say, to Klaus to jump into this weaving conversation with us. So please, Klaus, share us now your thoughts on this beautiful remark on a basket.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, Monica, so much for these first sparks towards another kind of future. I would like to go back actually with you to Northern California, where you were speaking at the Pioneers Conference some years ago, and we met at the Marine Civic Center, which is a design by Frank Lloyd Wright, and that's why I'm mentioning this, because everybody, of course, knows Frank Lloyd Wright, and that design is beautifully designed in a serene landscape, rolling hills, a beautiful pond. And when we stand there, one could say, well, but we know how to design, right? We know how to relate to the environment. I mean, look at the beautiful landscape, right? The community center, right in the midst of that. But I suppose we would disagree with that, right? Because it's a preconceived idea of what that is, right? What the green space is. And your beautiful reference to weaving that basket, I think is a beautiful opportunity to also ask, okay, do we already have to know where our design really goes in designing with plants, or shouldn't we weave a basket? Shouldn't we just start with working with plants and not really understanding where that is going to take us? Although we, I suppose we already have that feeling, in our gut, and maybe we could talk a little bit about our gut later on and how that relates to plants. We have that in our genes to imagine a future that is just radically different in how we be with the more than human environment. I'd like to ask you, how did this come along that we go into that relationship with plants in a preconceived, setting, in a preconceived idea, and how do we gonna get out of that?
Well, well, my understanding is that this is actually in the Western world, in the Western society. It's a story that comes from probably Aristotle, and then it's been reiterated over and over again. And in a way, this kind of doing science and connecting and relating to the world is a very colonial way of imposing a particular format and a particular shape and a particular others, including the humans themselves, of course. I mean, indigenous people have a first-hand experience of this. So the relationship that then we impose over them is the same one that we are imposing on everything, plants, animals, whatever you want. And that's why it doesn't work, because this space, I don't think, is about imposing anybody on anybody, but actually is about relating. And a relationship where you are imposing yourself on another, it doesn't allow for space for the other to express. So it's no longer a relationship, it's just a really bad marriage. And usually when marriage go really that bad, people leave. Or they break down, which is exactly what we're seeing. I guess the good news that I see is that, really, as you, Klaus, just pointed out, is like we have this inner knowing, this gut feeling that, if you talk to any kid, when they're small enough that they haven't been brainwashed or locked up in their house in front of a TV, they all know. Like, if you ask them, like, oh, can you talk to the tree? They just look at you like, but of course I can. And they go and have a chat with the tree. So I think that we all know how to do this. It's just that in our particular culture, we have been taught out of it. But, we all know that we've been studying so much and we have learned so much, and yet we can also forget very easily. So this is maybe one of the things that we should start forgetting, how to not talk to the rest, how to not listen to everyone else's. And of course, we can start from the human. We don't even listen to ourselves when we are in relating with each other. And but the natural world, so to speak, because we are the natural world too, but relating to plants and talking to trees or to other animals it's actually harder not to than actually doing it. And we all know this very well when you are actually lucky enough to embed yourself in nature for a little while. And it doesn't have to be the jungle of the Amazon. It can be just your park, your veggie patch, your garden, in the pots that you have on your balcony or on your window. It's like, it doesn't have to be anything special. Clearly, if you have a chance to go to a forest, of course it's easier, but anybody can start from anywhere. And I guess, again, the role of a design now is to facilitate that space so that those relationships are encouraged instead of like not, because the walls that we are building are not encouraging those relationships. But by encouraging those relationships, I think that we will be overwhelmed how everything is talking to us. It's like, please, can everyone shut up, please? And the other thing, of course, if you talk to any of the people with indigenous background, I have had a conversation just yesterday with a colleague from the US, and she's just been in Gabon recently for a trip. And one of the people in Gabon, one of these tribes that she was visiting, they were talking about plants. And she said, so do you know how to talk to trees? And he looked at her and said, like, what do you mean, your parents didn't teach you? And she was like, no. And it's like, oh my God, come, I'll have to teach you now, because this is an essential skill. You can't be here without knowing how to talk to plants. So I think that is what the priority should become. Is like, what do you mean? You don't know how to relate? What's wrong with you? But basically, that's where we are at. It's like, we don't know how to relate and we need to be taught. And we are lucky enough that there is enough people around that know how to do really well this little trick that is actually innate to us, because we are talking to the other, but there is no other. There is no other. The other is us. And so naturally we can talk to everything that it's us,
Right.
because
So,
there is no wall.
I would like to actually pick up right here when you said, oh, well, this is actually us, right? I mean, the plants are us. When you say that, maybe one or the other would wonder, excuse me, what are they talking about, right? I mean, why I'm here, and that's my lunch. This salad is my lunch, and that's my relationship. So I would like to. I think this is more than just a choice, a personal choice. I think it's a societal task that we are talking about, and really I feel that excitement stronger and stronger to elevate that understanding of connectedness and of entanglement with the more than human world to a societal issue, especially in that specific time of a pandemic, right, where we think, okay, the only way to get out of that is in terms of separation. And we are failing, and we are failing and failing and failing in separating, right? And it feels like when we're watching this, it feels like, yeah, because we are one, and that's so hard to share as an idea to many people who are in fear right now. And when we look at you, I mean, your excitement about the vegetal world, and it doesn't look like that there is so much fear we have to have, right? So I'm wondering, what are we missing out when we separate two plants, right? What is it exactly that we are really missing in our lives as ourselves, as part of ourselves? What is it that we should, urgently, reconsider becoming part of us?
Mm-hmm. This is it's almost like the big question, because and of course this is my experience, and it doesn't have to be for everyone, but in my own experience and understanding from what I'm learning from my own experience in life, what we are missing, it's us. By separating from everyone else, we are missing us, because, and it goes back to the beginning, is that because we live in relationship, the space is a relational space, whether we like it or not. And even when we build walls, we're still in a relationship. It's just that the relationship is got a wall in the middle. And so in that sense, it's like, I guess what's in for us to actually learn is, first of all, is a matter of just sharpening up our awareness. It's not that we have to learn anything difficult or weird. It's just taking the time. And as soon as you slow down, that awareness arises naturally, because you become more, it's almost like a more contemplative approach to life. It's just, and we all know that, like, when we slow down, we feel like we can be more peaceful and relaxed. It's just simple. So, and then in that spacing of slowing down, then we give the chance for this relational space to emerge and for us to see it, because it's always there, but we don't see it because we're going so fast and so carelessness, and with no attention, no devotion for that space. Now, if you slow down, and you enter, and you are entering in a space of awareness that allow you to really feel and palpably feel this relational space that we belong to, because it's inevitably what this space is about, then it becomes very difficult to say, or to even feel that, oh, I don't care about everything else, because it's just me. You just know that you cannot not care. And the space demands a relational space, like any relationship. Imagine like your dog, your cat, your family, like they demand attention. And in a way, the demand is not like, oh, I'm demanding, but it's just literally like they are so attractive that they call your attention. And when you do, it's an act, and I said this before, it's an act of devotion, because you're actually, what you're bringing to that relating is your full presence. And in that moment, you're actually meeting you. And that is really the big deal. what we're going to find is what it means to be human. And that's what we don't know yet. That's why we feel so scared, and we are like, so, oh my God, world is going to end, and we're so lost. But we're actually not lost. We've been here all along. It's just that we are not paying attention. And the moment we pay attention, we find, this is the real me, the full me, the human, is this being that is relating to other beings, all made of the same stuff, just in different forms. And then it becomes really a joke. It's like, this is actually quite crazy. I thought that I was here alone, and I've been like desperately trying to find me, and I was right here all the time. And so then we can afford, if we really wanted to, we can afford to build walls, because we know that they're not real. But at the moment, I think we are too immature. It's too early to build walls, because we actually believe the walls can separate. And of course, this virus is so hilarious. And I'm not, underestimating the people that is suffering, and all the drama that is causing, and suffering and fear as well. But it is pretty hilarious, because it's actually showing exactly what you said, Klaus. It's like, you want to try? Let's go a bit deeper. It's like, are you still able to separate this? No. Okay, how else am I going to show you that this is a game that doesn't work? That your little game of separating things in parcels and boxes, it doesn't exist. It doesn't work. So let's do it again. Okay, let's try. And so I guess what we're going to find, I hope, and again, this is just from my own experience, or you can take it whatever you like. We're going to find a sense of purpose. And the purpose comes from the fact of knowing what is our place in this relational space. So the plants, for example, their purpose, know what to do to be a plant, and they know exactly. They're not gonna wonder at the end of the day whether they have taken enough oxygen, if they produce enough oxygen, if they've taken enough carbon dioxide, or did I put enough in those roots, and did I take enough water? Like, they just taken exactly what it was right. And they haven't questioned, at the beginning of the day, they didn't question whether, okay, by the end of the day, I need to have done this much. No, they just were there. They were present with what was available. They were weaving their basket and looking at whatever colors were coming up. And it's a sense of trust that everything is just going to move exactly in perfect accord to what its purpose is. And, I was recently in the field, and Australia, like many other places, but Australia in particular, obviously has a very ambivalent relationship with fire. And of course, fire in many places is considered like a very destructive power, and you lose things. It burns down buildings and forests, and people loses their houses, and or sometimes even lives, animals, plants, human lives. And so it can be very scary. And yet, in Australia, fire, from an indigenous perspective, is considered is one of the agents, is one of the actors on the stage of this relational space. And so the relationship goes bad because we refuse to relate to it. So we don't take care, we don't put our attention to it. And so the fire needs to just do something that attracts the attention. But in fact, for millennia, the indigenous people here have had collaborated with fire to create, literally to design the landscape in a way that would allow for as many voices as possible to speak. And that is really, in a way, the purpose of us in that context. In that context, fire requires the human to engage so that there is cool burning, they call it, so that you burn at the right time, the right species, the right amount, so that everything actually regenerates and stays strong and vital. So that's our purpose, for example, in that context. It's like, but we can only discover that by relating to the space, relating to the land, relating to the animals, relating to the plants that are around us. So again, would I design? Because that's what we've been doing. When the white people came to Australia, well, the first thing that they did, it was like in the context of fire, they were like, oh, those crazy indigenous people, they're burning things. Stop burning. And that's when we got the really wild, aggressive fires coming through. And now slowly we are recognizing that actually that collaboration with fire creates spaces of life and living, instead of the other way of not engaging actually destroys everything and creates fear and death. And so it's a very small example of what I see is exactly the big picture. It's like we are not engaging with the actors of the landscape. And of course, we know what's happened when people trying to, shut someone down or shut you up. It's like eventually you just get frustrated and you just start screaming. And I think that's what the fire does when it goes out of control. But that's what we do when we are silenced. And so I guess the virus now is actually trying to show us that we cannot be silenced, and that is good. And the structures that we put in place that apparently are supposed to silence us, they don't work and they're crumbling. And that's also good.
Talking about silencing, yeah, you know, when you think about, the aliveness of the plant world, and I've had a chance to be in the jungle in Brazil, in Tocantins, and walking the jungle, and I believe everybody who walks there can see plants as beings, right, as individuals, and striving and being incredibly strong. And when I got back from that site, which is already says something, right? When I said I'm going back from there, I took the experience with me, and the urge to take that with me and share that with my students, my colleagues, my friends, everybody, and ask that question: can we have that also can we live that in our idea of the city, right? Or is the city a concept that cannot achieve that relatedness, right? That very dense and immediate experience of being with and within, not only within the forest but within the plant, and getting confused a little bit about where do I end and where do this beautiful jungle start, as my behavior changes, of course, in that environment. And so it has an immediate feedback to me understanding myself. And so the question is, how can we share that idea, this experience? How can we translate that into our society's idea of the city?
Well, I know that at least here in Australia, and I suspect the same will be true probably in the US and Europe as well, is the cities are becoming deserted here. People are moving out and they don't want to be there. And because suddenly when we're not so busy doing whatever it is that we were doing, wasting our time doing, we realize that actually what we are craving is this connection with, the green and the alive. And so a lot of people are living, for example, people are moving out of Sydney and they're coming. I live about 9 hours north of Sydney in the forest, and we've been invaded by all these people from Sydney because they're all desperately like, I need to get out of the city. I need to feel green. I need to feel the ocean. I need to see nature. And it's like, well, maybe it's not so much about getting out of the cities, but it's allowing nature to recolonize in a good way the space that belongs to it, and remove some of those walls. And so that's why, in a way, I think that there is a place for cities. It's just that, and this is where you guys are going to be, as I said at the beginning, I think you guys are going to be the master designer for the future, because that's the real question, is like, how are we gonna create a space where we can feel that connection while also being in high concentration of humans living together, because that's what really cities are. And I think that separating us in small boxes is not working, and we already know that. So maybe we need to open those boxes, and maybe the idea that we can be so insular, even because that's one of the main problems in cities as well. We don't talk to each other. We are so isolated within the monstrosity of the numbers of humans that we encounter every day if you take the public transport, and yet you talk to hardly anyone. And so I think one of the main challenges for you guys is going to be to design spaces and opportunity for that to be like, you have to talk. Like the only way in which you're going to get to whatever it is that you're going is by relating to the person that is right there with you, or even relating to the space. You know, you like to feel. And so I guess it's amazing, and it's great that you were mentioning the feeling of the jungle, and then you're trying to bring that feeling back. It's like that feeling is exactly what people are craving right now. So we actually know that feeling, and we only realizing now because we've been, you know, forced to pause. That is like, actually, that is the most important thing that I'm craving. And that's why, I don't know there, but here, all of the nursery businesses are doing amazing because everyone is buying plants to plant in their gardens, in pots, in whatever, anybody, whatever they got, they're planting. And it's just literally, I think, this craving of like, even if it's just a little basil plant, I don't care, as long as I have something that I can relate to and talk to. And when I make my little dish, I can take a leaf and put it in my meal and feel that I'm actually eating something that is alive and is giving me life, and I'm alive as much as that. And, you know, and feeling that connection. So when you were describing your experience in the jungle and how you see, and it's true, like when you are immersed in these environments, the entire question, the entire debate about like whether plants are alive, whether plants are beings, they're intelligent, they're whatever, is like becomes so redundant. It's like, just go and experience it and then we talk about it. You know, I don't even want to talk about this anymore. And so I guess this is going to be the real thing. Is like we already know, because of this enforced experience, that what we are actually craving is a return to our awareness to the relationships that we have with everything. And the lucky thing is that compared to some of the relationship that we have amongst humans, the relationship with the natural environments, so the plants and all of those, they are so forgiving. It's like they've been waiting for us all along. So if anything, they're like, okay, come home. And again, I'm going to share another little story. While I was out on country with these elders on, I learned about the fire. We stopped at a tree while we were walking, and huge tree. And it was a group of us, and some people in the group were quite further ahead of us. And there were like about 4 of us left behind. And we passed this big tree, and I hear, oh, why don't you come and sit with me? And I'm like, oh, no, we don't have time right now. You see, they're already ahead. We have to go. And, but I actually verbalized that with the other 3 people that I was with. And one of them was one of the elders. And I just said it out loud. I said, oh, the tree just want us to sit underneath it. And but I told him we don't have time. And the elder actually turned around and said, like, well, but why don't we? So just even in that is like, I actually still represented exactly where humanity is at. It's like, yeah, no, sorry, I don't have time for this. Yeah, thank you for the invitation, but I'm busy doing, don't know. Then so we sat under the tree. So it was a matter of attention. It's like, no, let's honor this. Like, we've been invited. Let's honor this relationship. Then we did. And we sat under the tree, and everyone was like, the 4 of us were just quiet. Nobody was speaking or anything. And the tree, for me, the tree said, while I was just sitting there doing nothing, the tree said, oh, it's really nice. You know, you're back. Like, your people, your kind, used to sit under me all the time, and it was such a pleasure. And then you disappeared for a while. And then I'm so glad that you're back now. And, but I should put this in context, because when the tree says you disappeared for a while, that site where I was hadn't seen people like humans living there for 120,000 years. So when the tree says like, oh yeah, I remember your mob, and now you went for a while and then you came back, it's like, from the perspective of the tree, that it's nothing. For us, 120,000 years, I cannot make sense of that. It's just such a big number that my mind doesn't even try. But that's the thing, is like, the tree was like, it's so good to have you back. So I don't think that, nature has forgotten us. If anything, everyone else has been waiting for us. And now, after a couple of millennia, maybe a little bit less even, a couple of millennia of like losing track of and kind of taking a detour, which is in the big picture of 120,000 years is obviously nothing. We are still remembered, we are still welcome, they're still waiting for us. And there are plenty of stories in the indigenous cultures where this returning home is told. So it's just literally, this is probably I'm sure that everyone that is a different time in history have said this about their own time, but this is definitely the best time to be alive because we're gonna see something really amazing, and it has to happen because it's inevitable. Mm-hmm. So there is no need to fear. It's a good time to be here and see us going home and return to the full human being that relates and knows who it is, and he doesn't have to be scared because he's supported by everything. There is nothing else to do. And so then all we have to do is to make baskets, like learn how to make baskets in paper. How cool is that? For absolutely no reason, just because you can. And maybe if it works, you might use it, but who knows?
Monica, thank you so much. We are, way beyond our 30 minutes, and that's like a tool. It becomes very obvious that 30 minutes, of course, don't work, right? To tell stories, because there's so much to share, and I think that's actually part of our message. There's so much to share and to remember, and to be with on this planet. That it certainly doesn't fit into 30 minutes, but it fits into an entire life. And I think that's what we probably all, getting from your talk, that, no, 30 minutes are certainly too short for really taking on that topic. It becomes my topic, my lifelong topic, to be that, and to be with plants, to be plants, and to think about how to weave that basket, right? Just with this tiny inspiration of a little more than half an hour. But as we know, right, seeds grow to big trees. Mm-hmm. And so I think we have been seeding something today that is going to linger in all of us, and earlier or a little later is going to sprout into a big tree. Monica, thank you so much, and we certainly have to stay in touch. After this wonderful possibility in that condition of the pandemic to finally meet here. So there are good things happening, and wishing you so much luck and outreach you possibly can have to get this message out. I think as it is more than just an individual task, I think it's a societal issue. Mm-hmm. To make that visible beyond that fear that is around, and see these amazing opportunities for all of us. Thank you so much.
That's right. Thank you so much for having me, and for indulging me telling the stories and showing you my basket. It's like, it was a pleasure. Thank you.